22 plates the first week, 37 the second, 51 the third, 68 the fourth. Abeni cooked every single one of them standing at Willa's stove with Chidinma's recipe cards taped to the cabinet above her head. She cooked with Chidinma's standard. Nothing leaves this kitchen unless it is the best thing that person will eat this month. She did not advertise. She did not post on social media. She didn't even have a phone to post from. Willa let her use the landline for orders. Opal Freeman spread the word at Mount Moriah on Sunday mornings. By the end of the fourth week, Abeni had made $3,740 in cash. She folded every single bill and put it in the same shoebox that had held her grandmother's recipes. She was 36 days from her due date. She had no insurance, no car, no legal representation, no address of her own. But she had $3,740, 12 recipes, and a kitchen that Willa refused to charge her a single dollar for. She also had something Dexter did not know about, something he had thrown into the suitcase by accident when he packed her things in those 10 furious minutes. A manila folder, brown, unmarked, tucked between two maternity dresses at the bottom of the bag. Inside was every receipt, every invoice, every bank statement, every cancelled check. 7 years of records she had saved. Grocery receipts for 43 client dinners she had shopped for, prepared and served. $8,917, all paid from her personal checking account. Utility payments for 26 months when Dexter's salary was still growing, $14,300. Car insurance payments she made on the Audi Q7 he now drove alone, $6,200 over 4 years. 3 lump sum payments toward his student loans from Howard University, $4,500. The security deposit she put down on their first apartment, $2,100 from money she had saved from her dental office job. Her W-2 forms from the dental practice showing $41,000 a year for 3 consecutive years. $123,000 she earned while he built his career and told people he had done it alone. Line by line, dollar by dollar, year by year. Every contribution she made had a date, an amount, and a paper trail. She had kept it all because Chidinma once told her, "Always keep your receipts, not for taxes, for truth." Dexter had called her a burden. The folder said otherwise, and he had not meant to give it to her. He had shoved it into the suitcase with her dresses because he didn't know what it was. He had never opened it. In 14 months of planning her removal from his life, moving money, changing locks, rehearsing his story, he had never once looked at the evidence of everything she had given him. That folder was about to cost him more than he could imagine. 3 weeks before her due date, Abeni went to Atrium Health Mercy Hospital for a prenatal checkup. She had no insurance, no ID. Dexter had kept her driver's license in the fireproof safe, and she hadn't thought to ask for it during those 10 minutes. No proof of address. The intake nurse told her she couldn't be seen without valid identification and insurance information. Abeni did not argue. She sat down in a plastic chair in the waiting room with her hands on her belly and waited. 40 minutes later, a hospital social worker named Yolanda Price walked through the waiting room on her way to a staff meeting. She saw a pregnant woman sitting alone with no purse, no phone, no coat, wearing house slippers 2 sizes too big. She stopped. She sat down beside her. She asked her name. She asked how far along she was. She asked her situation. And when Abeni told her calmly, without tears, without performance, Yolanda stood up and made 2 phone calls from the hallway. The first was to the hospital's patient advocacy office. Within 20 minutes, Abeni was in an examination room. The second was to a family law attorney named Denise Okafor Banks, who worked with a domestic displacement nonprofit called Second Door Charlotte. Denise had handled 47 cases like this in the last 3 years. She knew exactly what it was. She knew exactly what to file. Within 72 hours,
Denise had filed 3 motions with Mecklenburg County Family Court: a petition for emergency spousal support, a request for a temporary restraining order based on financial abuse and unlawful lockout during pregnancy, and a motion to freeze all joint marital assets that Dexter had transferred into personal accounts.
Dexter's attorney filed a counter-petition within 48 hours. He claimed Abini had left the marital home voluntarily, that she had exhibited erratic and emotionally unstable behavior throughout the pregnancy, that she had refused to contribute to the household for over a year and had become financially dependent by choice. He attached a signed statement from Cassandra Mills, stating that Cassandra had been present on the night in question, that Abini had packed her belongings calmly and left the marital home of her own free will, that she had not been forced, that she had not been locked out, that she had simply chosen to leave. For 3 days it looked like it might work. Dexter's version was clean, organized. It had a witness signature. Abini's version had no documentation from that night, no police report, no video, no recording, no text messages from a phone she no longer had.
The neighbor across the street from the house on Tuckasegee Road, a retired postal worker named Gerald Hayes, had seen Dexter drop the suitcase on the sidewalk that night. He had been on his porch. He had watched the whole thing. But Gerald was 74 years old, and he didn't want to get involved. He told his wife he hadn't seen anything. He locked his front door and went to bed. For 3 days, Abini sat in Willa's kitchen and felt something she hadn't felt since the night on the sidewalk. She felt invisible again. Not seen, not believed, not counted. The system that was supposed to protect her was listening to the man who had thrown her out. His lie was neat. Her truth was messy. And she knew from experience that the world almost always chooses neat over messy. She thought about giving up. Not the cooking, not the baby, but the fight. She thought about letting Dexter have the story he had written. She thought about disappearing the way he wanted her to, quietly, without leaving a mark. But then she looked at the shoebox on the kitchen table, the one with Chidinma's recipes, the one with the letter that said, "If my family ever needs them, they will know what to do." She did not give up. She set the shoebox on the shelf above the stove and went back to cooking. Willa watched her from across the table and said nothing. She was waiting for the right moment, and the right moment was coming faster than anyone expected. Then Pauline Achebe made a phone call. Pauline was the records clerk at Vanguard Crown Holdings, the same woman Willa had called the night Abini showed up on her porch. 53 years old, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a small pot of African violets on her desk. Quiet, precise, and she had spent the last 6 weeks pulling files. Not because anyone asked her to, not because she was paid to, because she had watched Dexter Osei operate for 3 years from behind a filing cabinet, and she knew what kind of man carefully hides everything. She had seen him submit expense reports for client dinners that never happened, receipts from restaurants on nights when the buildings were closed. He had billed the company for property inspections he never conducted, dates that overlapped with his golf schedule at Quail Hollow. She had found discrepancies in the maintenance budgets of 4 of the 11 buildings he managed, small amounts at first, $1,200 here, $3,400 there, a vendor payment to a company that did not seem to exist, another payment to a contractor whose address matched a P.O. box registered in Dexter's middle name. Over 3 years, the total came to $87,000. Pauline did not call Abini. She did not call Denise, or a reporter, or a cousin with a loud mouth. She called the one person whose job it was to know, the internal compliance officer at Vanguard Crown Holdings. She gave him 3 file numbers and said, "You need to look at these." The audit began on a Tuesday morning. Quiet. 2 people from the compliance team and an outside forensic accountant. They did not announce it. They simply began pulling the same records Pauline had already found. Dexter did not know about it until Thursday afternoon at 4:22 p.m., when his access badge stopped working at the front door of Building 7 on North Tryon Street. He swiped it 3 times. The red light blinked each time. A security guard, a man named Marcus, who had opened that door for Dexter every morning for 4 years, who had said, "Good morning, Mr. Osei," over 1,000 times, whose name Dexter had never once asked for, walked over and said 7 words. "Mr. Osei, you are not authorized to enter." Dexter looked at Marcus's face and saw something he had never seen there before. Not anger, not pity, nothing. Marcus looked at him the way you look at someone who no longer exists in the system. The way Dexter had looked at Abeni on the night he turned off the porch light. That was the moment he understood. Not what he had done wrong, not yet. Just that something had shifted in a direction he could not control. The structures he had built, the badge access, the expense accounts, the corporate title, the leverage, were running without him now. They were running against him. By Friday, Vanguard Crown had suspended Dexter without pay, pending a full financial review. By the following Monday, his company-issued laptop, phone, and parking pass had been collected from his home by a courier who did not make small talk. By Wednesday, his divorce attorney, Lawrence Kemp, had withdrawn representation. No explanation, just a notice of withdrawal filed with the court and a stopped return of calls. The court hearing was on a Thursday morning in courtroom 4B of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Denise Okafor Banks stood at the table on the left side. Abeni sat behind her, in a dress Willa had ironed that morning. Dexter sat on the right side, alone. He had no attorney. He had not shaved. Denise presented the folder. Every receipt, every bank statement, every canceled check, every W-2, every grocery list, every payment. She laid them on the table one at a time. She did not rush. She read each item like it was a line from a hymn. $8,917 in groceries for client dinners. $14,300 in utility payments. $6,200 in car insurance. $4,500 in student loan payments. $2,100 for the first apartment deposit. $123,000 in income earned while Dexter built his career. The judge, Harold Whitfields, 22 years on the bench, reviewed the folder for 11 minutes. He turned each page slowly. He wrote notes in the margin of his legal pad. He did not look up. When he finished, he removed his glasses. He looked at Dexter, then at Abeni. Then he issued his ruling. Emergency spousal support of $3,200 per month. Temporary exclusive possession of the marital home on Tuckasegee Road to Abeni, effective immediately. A restraining order requiring Dexter to vacate within 48 hours. A referral for a full forensic accounting of all marital assets and all transfers made in the previous 18 months. Dexter sat in that courtroom and did not move for 6 minutes after the ruling. His hands were flat on the table. His eyes were fixed on a point on the wall that held nothing. He had spent 14 months making sure she had nothing. And in the end, the one thing he had given her, the suitcase he packed in 10 angry minutes without checking what he was throwing in, contained the only evidence that mattered. He had handed her the receipts himself. 14 months later, on a Saturday morning in December, a restaurant opened on West Trade Street in Charlotte's West End neighborhood. Small, 28 seats, exposed brick walls, warm amber lighting, an open pass-through window so customers could see the food being made and smell it before it arrived. The sign above the door was carved from reclaimed wood. Chidinma's Table. Abeni Duke stood in that kitchen at 6:15 in the morning with her daughter strapped to her chest in a cloth carrier. The baby's name was Adeze Chidinma Indukuai. She was 11 months old. She had her mother's eyes and her great-grandmother's name. She slept through the sound of onions hitting hot oil. The first customer walked in at 7 a.m. It was Opal Freeman, wearing her Sunday hat on a Saturday. She ordered the groundnut soup. She ate it slowly with bread she tore into small pieces and did not say anything until the bowl was empty. Then she looked at Abeni and said, "Chidinma would be proud, and she would tell you the soup needed one more minute." Abeni laughed. It was the first time she had laughed like that in 2 years. By the third month, Chidinma's Table had a wait list every Friday and Saturday night.
By the 6th month, the Charlotte Observer ran a full-page profile in the food section, the recipes that survived. By the 9th month, Abani had hired 3 cooks and a front-of-house manager named Kofi Mensah. She paid every one of them above market rate. She offered health insurance from day one. She closed the restaurant every Sunday and Monday so her staff could rest. Chidinma's standard was not just about the food. It was about the people who made it.
Willa Saunders came to the restaurant every Wednesday at 12:30. She never paid. Abani would not allow it. She sat at table 3 by the front window and ate whatever Abani decided to cook for her that day. She never ordered from the menu. She never asked what was coming. She said the same thing every time she sat down. "Surprise me." And every time, Abani did. Abani also started a program she ran from the restaurant kitchen every second Saturday of the month. She called it Second Kitchen. Every month, she hosted 4 women who had been displaced by divorce, by abuse, by poverty, by the kind of quiet invisibility that makes the world forget you were standing right there. She taught them to cook. Not just recipes, not just techniques. She taught them Chidinma's standard. She said it the same way every time, the way her grandmother had said it to her. "Nothing leaves this kitchen unless it is the best thing that person will eat this month."
3 of those women started their own catering businesses within a year. One of them, Farida Johnson, who had shown up to the first class with a black eye and a bus transfer and a daughter who sat in the corner drawing pictures of houses she had never lived in, now supplies 3 office buildings in uptown Charlotte with weekly lunch service. She cooks groundnut soup every Thursday. She learned it in Abani's kitchen. She charges $18 a plate and has a waiting list. Her daughter draws pictures of their apartment now. The apartment has a kitchen with 2 windows. Another woman from the program, Tanya Rowe, started baking sweet potato pies for farmers markets across Mecklenburg County. She told the Charlotte Observer that the first thing Abani taught her was not a recipe, it was a sentence. "You are not starting over. You are starting from everything you already know." On the wall of Chidinma's table, next to the pass-through kitchen window, there is a framed photograph. Black and white. A woman in a white apron standing in a commercial kitchen, hands on her hips, looking directly at the camera as if to say, "I was here. I did this. I fed everyone who walked through that door. Remember my name." Below the photograph, in small gold letters pressed into a brass plate, Chidinma Indukuai, 1947 to 2013. She fed everyone. She forgot no one. Dexter Osei was terminated from Vanguard Crown Holdings after the audit confirmed $87,000 in fraudulent expense claims and fabricated vendor payments. He was not criminally charged. The company settled internally to avoid publicity, but his real estate license was suspended pending review by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. His name appeared in a public disciplinary filing. 3 former clients withdrew their business within 60 days. Cassandra Mills moved to Raleigh 2 weeks after the court ruling. She did not leave a forwarding address. Abani never called him, never texted him,
Never mentioned his name in the Charlotte Observer profile or in any interview that followed. She never stood in front of a camera and told the world what he did to her that night in the rain. She didn't need to. The court documents spoke. The financial records spoke. The restaurant spoke every time someone sat down at a table and tasted food made from recipes a grandmother had left in a locker for 31 years, waiting for the right person to find them. And every Wednesday at 12:30, when Willa Saunders sat at table 3 by the window, and Abani brought her a plate and sat across from her for 3 quiet minutes. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they just sat there together. 2 women, 1 table, sunlight coming through the glass. That silence said everything that needed to be said. There is a moment in every life when the world decides whether to see you or to erase you. For Abani Duke, that moment came in the rain, barefoot, 8 months pregnant, standing under a porch light that wasn't hers, thrown out of a home she had built with her own hands and her own money and 3 years of labor that a man had told people never existed.
For a moment, the world looked past her. But what the world did not understand, what Dexter did not understand, is this. You can shut a door on a person. You can turn off the porch light. You can take their money, their name, their place in your life. But you cannot take what they carry inside their hands. Because some people don't build their lives out of comfort. They build them out of memory, out of loss, out of everything they were forced to survive. And when those people rise, they don't just come back. They become something no one can control again. Dexter thought he left Abeni Duke with nothing. What he actually left her with was the one thing that would destroy him and rebuild her. Her name, her skill, her truth.
And the night he closed that door was the last moment in his life where he had power over anything. Because while he was turning off the porch light, she was walking toward a life that was already waiting for her. A life where people stand in line just to taste what she creates. A life where her daughter grows up knowing exactly who her mother is and exactly what she survived. A life where a grandmother's voice, passed down through 12 recipes in yellowed envelopes, still moves through a kitchen every single day. Abeni Duke was never a burden. She was the foundation. And foundations don't disappear. They rise. They rebuild. And one day they become something the people who doubted them will spend the rest of their lives being unable to look away from. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. Stories like this one deserve to travel. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'll see you in the next one. He dropped her suitcase on the sidewalk at 11:43 at night in front of the neighbors in the rain. 8 months pregnant. No coat, no phone, no wallet. Just a belly full of his child and a plastic bag with 3 maternity dresses she had bought with her own $47. He locked the door, turned off the porch light, and went back to the woman sitting on his couch. She walked 9 blocks in the rain before she found a door with the light still on. She knocked. She did not know who lived behind it, but the person behind that door knew exactly who she was and what she was carrying. Without knowing she was carrying it, was going to cost him everything. The rain hit the pavement on Bays Ford Road in Charlotte, North Carolina, like gravel thrown from a rooftop. The kind of rain that soaks through clothes in 30 seconds, that turns gutters into rivers. Abeni Duke stood on a stranger's porch with water running down her face and her belly pressing hard against a dress that was too thin for October. Her feet were bare, her toes were numb. She knocked again. The door opened. A woman in her late 60s stood there in a housecoat and slippers. Silver hair pulled tight into a bun, deep brown skin, hands that looked like they had never stopped working. Her name was Willa Mae Saunders. She looked at Abeni's belly first, then at her bare feet on the cold concrete, then at the plastic bag hanging from her right hand. "Come in," Willa said. She did not ask a single question. She sat Abeni down at the kitchen table, put a towel around her shoulders and another over her feet, boiled water on a stove with a crack in the back burner, and set a mug of ginger tea in front of her. Then she sat across from her and waited. The clock on the wall said 12:07 a.m. Abeni could not stop shaking, not from the cold, from everything that had led to this porch. Her husband, Dexter Osei, had spent 14 months planning this night. She just hadn't known it until the suitcase hit the sidewalk. Dexter was a senior property manager for a commercial real estate group called Vanguard Crown Holdings, based in Uptown Charlotte. He managed 11 buildings across 3 zip codes. He earned $188,000 a year. He drove a black Audi Q7 with leather seats and tinted windows, wore tailored suits on Mondays and Thursdays, and played golf at the Quail Hollow Club on Saturdays. He had a firm handshake and a voice that made people feel like they were being led into a secret. For the last 3 years, he had been telling everyone, colleagues, his mother, his golf partners, even his barber on Central Avenue, that his wife contributed nothing to their life. That was the lie he had built everything on. And tonight, he had finally acted on it. What Dexter did not know was that Willa Mae Saunders had worked as a housekeeper for Vanguard Crown Holdings for 19 years. She cleaned the floors and restrooms of the very buildings he managed. She had seen him in the hallways hundreds of times. She had heard him on the phone with his wife, voice flat and cold, telling her not to call during business hours. She had watched him charm clients in the lobby, dismiss assistants with a wave, and talk about his wife to other men like she was a coat he had outgrown. But that was not why Willa opened the door that night. She opened it because she recognized Abini's face. Not from the hallways, from a photograph. A photograph taped to the inside of a locker in the basement of Building 7 on North Tryon Street. A locker that had belonged to a woman named Chidinma Indukwai, Abini's grandmother. Chidinma had worked as a cook for the same company 31 years before Willa arrived. She had cooked meals for board meetings, holiday lunches, Friday staff dinners, every company event that required food people would remember. She had done it for 9 years. And when she moved back to Silver Spring, Maryland, she had left something behind in that locker, something no one had touched for decades. Abini did not know any of this. She only knew that her grandmother had once worked somewhere in Charlotte before moving back to Maryland, where Abini had grown up in a small apartment with yellow curtains and the smell of cayenne always in the air. Chidinma had taught Abini to cook before she died. West African spice blends passed down from her own mother. Slow braised stews that took 4 hours and could not be rushed. Groundnut soup with smoked turkey and a pinch of something sweet that nobody could name. Jollof rice that made grown men close their eyes and go quiet. Abini had learned every recipe by standing next to Chidinma in the kitchen from the age of 7 to the age of 16. She learned by watching, by tasting, by getting her knuckles tapped when she added too much salt. She learned the way Chidinma moved, never rushing, never measuring twice, always knowing when the oil was at the right temperature by the sound it made when the onion touched it. Then Chidinma passed. January 14th, 2013, a stroke in the kitchen. She was 66 years old. And Abini stopped cooking. Not because she forgot how, because the kitchen reminded her of a woman she could not talk about without her chest tightening and her hands going still. The skill was still inside her hands. She had buried it the way you bury something that hurts too much to hold. Willa poured more tea. She watched this young woman shaking at her table and said nothing about what she knew. Not yet. She only asked one question. "When is the baby due?" 5 weeks, Abini said. Willa stood up slowly, walked to the hallway closet, and came back with a clean nightgown that smelled like lavender fabric softener, a pair of thick wool socks, and a heavy blanket. She handed them to Abini and pointed down the hall. "The room at the end has a bed. You sleep there tonight. We talk in the morning." Abini opened her mouth to thank her, to explain, to apologize for arriving like a ghost on a stranger's porch at midnight. Willa raised one hand. The hand was firm. The eyes were soft. Tomorrow. That night, Abini slept for the first time in 6 days. She did not dream. She did not wake at 3 in the morning to the sound of Dexter standing in the doorway watching her in the dark, the way he had started doing 3 months ago. She did not hear the sound of him locking the bedroom door from the outside, the habit he had picked up in August. She just slept, deep and full and heavy. What she did not know was that Willa sat in the kitchen until 2 in the morning with the light above the stove still on and made one phone call. To a woman named Pauline Achebe, who worked in the records department at Vanguard Crown Holdings. Pauline had worked there for 11 years. She knew where every file was, which ones had been moved, which had been buried, which ones had signatures that did not match. Willa asked her one question. Pauline's answer changed the direction of everything that followed. The next morning, Abini sat at the kitchen table with sunlight coming through the window and told Willa everything. She told her that she and Dexter had been married for 7 years, that when they first married, they had $11,400 between them in a joint account, that she had worked as an office manager at a dental practice on Sardis Road for 3 years, while he built his career at Vanguard Crown, that she had paid the rent on their first apartment $1,350 a month for 26 straight months while his salary caught up. That she had typed his quarterly reports for 2 years because he said he couldn't afford an assistant. That she had cooked dinner for his clients at their home 43 times in the last 3 years alone. That she had hosted every holiday event since 2020, including a Christmas party for 27 people that she planned, decorated, catered, and cleaned up after while 7 months pregnant. She told her that Dexter had put every property, every account, every vehicle in his name alone. That she had asked him twice to add her name to the mortgage on the house on Tuckasegee Road, and both times he had said, "When the time is right." That when she got pregnant, he told her to quit her job because it was the right thing for the family. She did. And the moment she had no income of her own, he started calling her a burden. Not loudly, not in arguments. In passing. At dinner. On the phone to his mother, with Abini standing in the next room. She told her that 3 months ago, Dexter had brought a woman named Cassandra Mills into their home on a Sunday afternoon, introduced her as a colleague from the Southeast Division, that Cassandra came back again and again, first every Wednesday, then Tuesdays and Wednesdays, then entire weekends, that her perfume, vanilla and something sharp, started showing up on the pillows, the couch, the bathroom towels, that Abini had found a receipt in his jacket for a necklace she never received, $4,200 from a jeweler on South Boulevard. That when she asked about it, Dexter told her she was paranoid and hormonal, and that pregnancy was making her irrational. 2 weeks later, she saw Cassandra wearing it at a brunch Dexter hosted at their home. Cassandra touched the pendant while looking directly at Abini, and smiled. She told her that last night at 11:15, Dexter sat her down at the kitchen table and said 5 words. "This is not your home." He had the locks changed at 9 in the morning while she was at her prenatal appointment. She didn't know until she came back and her key didn't work. Her name was not on the deed, not on the lease, not on the car title. He had already moved $34,000 from their joint savings into a personal account at a different bank. He handed her the suitcase, the gray Samsonite she had bought for their honeymoon in Savannah, and said she had 10 minutes to pack whatever fit inside. When she asked where she was supposed to go, 8 months pregnant, no phone, no car, no family in Charlotte, he said, "That is not my problem." Cassandra was sitting on the couch when Abini walked past. She did not look up from her phone. Willa listened to every word without moving. She did not interrupt. She did not shake her head or say, "Lord have mercy," or anything that would have made Abini feel pitied. When Abini finished, the kitchen was quiet except for the refrigerator humming. Then Willa stood up. She walked to the back bedroom. She came back carrying a shoebox with a rubber band around it. She set it on the table, pulled off the rubber band, and opened it. Inside were 12 envelopes, each one sealed with clear tape that had yellowed with age. Each one labeled in handwriting that was faded but still perfectly clear. Chidinma Indukue. Personal recipes. Not for sale. Abeni stopped breathing. "Your grandmother worked at the same company your husband manages now," Willa said quietly. "She was the best cook that building ever had. 19 years after she left, people still talked about her jollof rice at the holiday party. She left these behind in her locker in the basement when she went back to Maryland. Nobody cleaned out that locker for decades. I found them 6 years ago when they finally cleared the basement for renovation. I kept them because the handwriting was too beautiful to throw away. I didn't know who they belonged to, not until I saw your picture in that locker, and not until I saw your face last night on my porch in the rain." Abini opened the first envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a recipe card written in her grandmother's hand on cardstock that had gone soft with time. Ground nut soup, Chidinma's way. The measurements were exact. The instructions were detailed. The margins had small notes in pencil. More ginger in winter. Less tomato when the paste is strong. Always taste before the 3rd hour. Never rush the peanuts. She opened the second. Jollof rice, wedding style. The note in the margin. The burnt bottom is not a mistake, it is the prize. Then the third, stew for celebrations. The fourth, pepper soup for healing. The fifth, Chidinma's secret suya spice blend. The sixth, chin chin, Christmas only. The seventh through the 11th, each one a complete recipe, each one with her grandmother's notes in the margins, each one smelling faintly of palm oil and dried thyme and the kind of kitchen that never goes cold. Abeni held the 12th envelope and could not open it. Her hands were shaking too hard. Willa reached across the table and opened it for her. Inside was not a recipe, it was a letter. To whoever finds these, I am Chidinma Indukwai. I cooked for this company for 9 years. I fed their board members, their partners, their holiday guests. I was never paid what I was worth, but I gave them my best, because that is what my mother taught me. These recipes are my life's work. They are not for sale. They are not for anyone who did not earn them. If my family ever needs them, they will know what to do. If not, let them feed whoever is hungry. That is enough. Abeni put her forehead down on the kitchen table and cried. Not the kind of crying that comes from sadness, the kind that comes from being found. It was the first time she had cried in 3 years. She had stopped the day Dexter told her that crying was manipulation. Willa let her cry. She did not touch her. She did not speak. She sat with her hands folded and waited until the crying slowed and stopped. Then she said the thing Abeni would carry for the rest of her life. Your grandmother left you an inheritance. Not money, something better. She left you a skill that nobody can take from you, a name that nobody can erase, and 12 recipes that can build whatever you need them to build. The only question is whether you're ready to use them. Over the next 4 weeks, something shifted inside that small house on Baysford Road. Abeni started cooking again. Not because she wanted to, not because she was healed, because her hands remembered before her heart was ready. She would stand at the stove and her fingers would reach for the cayenne at the exact moment the recipe required it. She would stir the pot counterclockwise, the way Chidinma stirred. She would lift the spoon and blow on it and taste with her eyes closed, the way her grandmother did every single time. She made the groundnut soup first. She stood at the stove for 3 hours, feet aching, her back pulling tight across her lower spine. The baby kicked twice during the 2nd hour, hard enough that she had to grip the counter. She did not stop. The smell filled the kitchen, peanuts and tomato and smoked turkey and cayenne, and something underneath that had no name, something that came from the way Chidinma layered the spices in a specific order that no cookbook had ever printed. It was not a recipe anyone could copy from a card. It was a rhythm, and Abeni's hands still knew it. Willa walked in from the living room without being asked and sat down at the table. Abeni placed a bowl in front of her. Thick, golden, a thin layer of red oil floating on top. Willa took 1 spoonful. She closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped. Her breathing slowed. She didn't speak for 4 full minutes. Then she opened her eyes, set the spoon down, and said, "That is not food. That is a testimony." Word spread the way things spread in neighborhoods where people still talk to each other across fences. Willa's next-door neighbor, a retired teacher named Opal Freeman, came by the next day. She tasted the jollof rice. She called her sister Rochelle. Rochelle called her prayer group at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. The prayer group told the choir. The choir told the deacons. Within 10 days, Abeni was cooking 3 meals a week out of Willa's kitchen for paying customers. $15 a plate, cash only, pickup between 5 and 7.